Welcome to 321 exams. Today, we're looking at the use of English. And our lesson for today is the comprehension passage. Now, the comprehension passage is the most important, or one of the most important aspects of the JAMB English exams. Do you know why? Because it has the highest mark, which is a whopping of 3 marks. Now, it is pertinent that we understand what the comprehension passage is all about. And that will take us to, we're looking at the outline. What are the outline we're looking at? We're looking at statements. What exactly is the meaning of statements? Now we're looking at the types of statements. Under the types of statements, we're looking at the indirect factual statement. We're looking at the implied statement. We're looking at statement of probability. We're looking at the direct factual statement. We're looking at the absolute statement of fact. We're looking at the non-absolute statement of fact. We're looking at the absolute deduction. We're looking at the non-factual statement. We're looking at the double negative statement. We're also lastly looking at the conditional statement. Once we are done with these various types of statements, the next we have to look at the mood and also the types of mood. Very importantly, a pivotal aspect of mood is the tone, because we have to discuss tone. Then once we are done with tone, we're looking at the types of tone. Under the types of tone, we're looking at the satiric tone, the sarcastic tone, the sermonizing tone, the non-committal tone, the tone of approval and disapproval, the historical tone, the analytical tone, the argumentative tone. Immediately we are done with the tone, we are looking at a very important aspect, which is finding the meaning of a word or expression as used in the passage, which I call the replacement of words. Then we're looking at suggesting a suitable or appropriate title for a passage before we look at the method of tackling the JAMB comprehension passage, which I call the men's method and the boys' method. So the first thing we have to look at now is to look at what exactly do we refer to as statement. Now, statement represents the language the examiner uses to convey his message to the examinee. So I said statement. Statement is the language used by the examiner to convey his message to the examinee. Now, look at it now. The first thing you must actually understand is that the examiner has the right to convey his message using various types of languages. Now, it is your duty to first understand or ascertain the language of the examiner, because it is when you have understood the language of the examiner before you can understand the message the examiner is trying to convey. But most students find it difficult. Why? Because they just go straight to understand the message of the examiner without understanding the language the examiner has used to convey his message. And that is the reason why this particular lesson would discuss and explain all about statement. Now, as I said earlier on, that if you have seen some of your comprehension passage that you have read, you will have discovered that sometimes you read a particular comprehension passage for the first time. After reading it for the first time, you go back again to read it for the second time. Even when you look at the question, it's as if you have not even read anything in the examination hall. Now, do you know why such comprehension passage is like that to you? Because you have gone straight to just understand the message of the examiner without understanding the language the examiner has used to convey his message. So the first thing you must know is that what? The various languages the examiner can use to convey his message must first be ascertained before you can discover or understand the message of the examiner. So that's why I said statement here represents the language used by the examiner to convey his message to the examinee. So we're going to look at the types of statements. Types of statements. Types of statements. And we have about 10 types of statements we have to look at today. The first one is the indirect factual statement. Now, first is what we refer to as an indirect factual statement. This is also called a verbal irony in literature. Okay, now, this is also called a verbal irony. Now, why do I call it a verbal irony? Because here, a writer says a thing but means the opposite of what he has said. So once the writer says a thing and means the opposite of what he has said, such a fact has been expressed in an indirect manner. So the writer says a thing The writer says a thing, but means the opposite of what he has said. Now, this is called the indirect factual statement. Now, let me give you a practical example before we look at even the JAMB past question. Now, you will discover that sometimes a mother will call a child and ask the child that, okay, Obi or Ada, please go and get me a bottle of oil across the road. While crossing the road, don't look left, don't look right, just cross. And while coming back, don't just carry the bottle of oil and break it and come back home empty. Now, in that regard, what exactly is the mother trying to tell the child? First, at that particular situation, the mother is trying to tell the child to be very careful. Now, why is the mother trying to tell the child to be very careful? Did the mother say it directly to the child that the child should be careful? No. The mother has said something, but means the opposite of what she has said. So in that regard, we'll call that an indirect factual statement, whereby a fact is being expressed in an indirect manner. A writer says a thing, but means the opposite of what he has said. Now, taking a look at our past question, let's take an example to express or buttress this particular type of statement. If you look at JAMB 1987, passage 2, question 7, from the particular passage, we can call it from the first paragraph that the writer said, you all know how friendly we are with the Okpere people. Do you think that any Umaru man who goes to prison there will come back alive? You all know how friendly we are with the Okpere people. Do you think that any Umaru man who goes to prison there will come back alive? The writer said, according to the passage, the people of Umaru and Okpere are A, are friends. B, are only acquaintance. C, are no friends. D, can never be enemies. Now, looking at this particular passage, what have we been able to see? Now, the first point here is, look at the language of the examiner. You all know how friendly we are with the Okpere people. You all know how friendly. Now, the writer has said something, but he means the opposite of what he has said. What has the writer said? You all know how friendly we are. So the writer has said a particular thing that they are friendly, but he's trying to convey to you that they are not friendly. So in that regard, what do you do in this situation? First, understand the language of the examiner. The examiner has used a particular language in this regard. What is the language the examiner has used in this regard? That firstly, we are friendly. You all know how friendly with the Umaru people. Do you think that any Umaru man who goes to prison there will come back alive? In this regard, the examiner has stated a fact in an indirect manner. What is the fact he has stated? That the people of Umaru and Okpere are no friends. That's the first point. But come back and look at the options we have. A, are friends. That's not true. B, are only acquaintance. It's also not true. C, are no friends. That is the point. Now, why is that the point? Because the writer has said a thing, but means the opposite of what he has said. So the answer is what? C, are no friends. Look at number D, can never be enemies. Is also not true. Now, let me quickly teach you something that you will never learn anywhere apart from 3-2-1 exams. Now, look at it now. I'm going to teach you what they call the elimination method. The elimination method. Now, what do we refer to as the elimination method? The elimination method is your ability as a student to identify the odd option whenever you have been given a question. The JAMB exams in most cases is always interested in the ability of a student to identify the odd option. Which of the options do not follow the pattern? Which of the options do not follow the trend? So in most cases, once you see a question, the first thing you do is your ability to analyze the option. Now, take note, once you do not have the ability to analyze the options being given, there's every tendency you might not get the correctness of that particular question. And that will make you a very intelligent student. Trust me, the JAMB exams is purely for intelligent students. Now, what makes a student intelligent and what makes a student brilliant? I'll tell you that in our next lesson. But let's move ahead. When I said, looking at these options now, we now have option A, are friends. This is positive. B, are only acquaintance is also positive. C, are no friends is negative. D, can never be enemies is positive. Look at the examiner. He has given you 3 options that are positive. One option is negative. Which one is odd? The negative one. And that's why the answer is what? C. Are no friends. Thank you. Let's look at the next type of statement, which is the implied statement. implied statement. Now, under this implied statement, this is the most commonest kind of statement being used by the examiner when it comes to the comprehension passage. Now, why is it the commonest kind of statement being used? Because this is when a fact is not expressly stated in the passage. The fact is not expressly stated in the passage. Now, once the fact is not expressly stated in the passage, the fact can only be deduced. The fact can only be extrapolated by you looking at the basic pointers the examiner has given. Now, in this regard, the examiner expects you to reach a logical conclusion, what I call logical conclusion. Now, how do you reach a logical conclusion? You reach a logical conclusion by identifying the choice of words, which we call the dictions. The dictions of the writer. It is the writer's diction that helps you or enables you to look at what? To come to that logical conclusion. Now, why must you come to such a logical conclusion when an implied statement has been given? Now, the essence why you come to such a logical conclusion is because the writer has not stated the fact in the passage. What the writer expects you to do is to reach the logical conclusion from what has happened in the passage by you looking at the pointers the examiner has given to you. So which means the examiner will give you some pointers. It is these pointers that will lead you to that logical conclusion. So for you to reach this logical conclusion, the first point is to identify the pointers in the exam. Why? Because the fact is not expressly stated, but the fact can only be deduced from what has been stated. So the writer will state something which is not the fact, but you can gather up those things the writer has stated to come to the conclusion or to come to the fact being expressed by the examiner. Let's take a good example. Look at this now. When we got to the spot, we saw an ocean of blood. Neighboring villagers stood near and prayed endlessly for the souls of the departed ones. As rescuers were battling to remove the remains of those who were trapped by the damaged vehicle, we all cried our eyes out. And I said, it can be implied from the passage. It can be implied. So an implied statement is that statement that should be gotten by looking at the pointers the examiner has given before you come to the conclusion, which we call the logical conclusion. It's also called inference. Now, looking at this now, let's break the passage down into pieces and come down to what exactly has happened in the passage. The first paragraph says, when we got to the spot, we saw an ocean of blood. Look at this now, ocean of blood. Neighboring villagers stood near and prayed endlessly for the souls of the departed ones. Souls of the departed. Look at this now. So what do you mean by souls of the departed? Some people have died. Death has taken place. As rescuers were battling to remove the remains. What do you refer to as remains in English language? Remains means what? Dead bodies. Dead what? Bodies. Can you see my pointers now? Remains, dead bodies. Of those who were trapped by the damaged vehicle. Damaged vehicle. We all cried our eyes out. Now look at the pointers that's actually underlined in the passage. And let's come back and read the options. Then I say it can be implied from the passage that A, there was a ghastly accident. Yes, there was an accident because of the damaged vehicle. That's a pointer. But is it a ghastly accident? We'll get there. B, there was a fatal accident. Trust me, there is an accident. So option A and option B should be considered. Number C says there was a traffic congestion. This is an error. It's an error. It's an error. D, there was a ritual killing. From what we have read, does anything suggest a ritual killing? I don't think so. So there was no ritual killing. Now let me quickly give you another hint here. Now at every point in time as a JAMB student, you must have the ability to eliminate 2 options. It is wrong for you to consider 4 options. Now, why is it necessary? In this regard, I will teach you how to eliminate 2 options. Now, the reason why you have to eliminate 2 options and consider only 2 options is because that if you consider 4 options, there's every tendency you might not get the answer correctly. By the point whereby you are able to limit your options to 2, there is every tendency you might get the answers correctly. So come back to this passage and see. Now, I've been able to eliminate 2 options. Why the two options have eliminated now? There was a traffic congestion, which is not true, because from what we have read in the passage, there was no logical conclusion from the pointers the examiner has given to suggest that we had a ritual killing or a fatal or a traffic congestion. So I've eliminated these two options, option C and option D. They are naturally wrong. Now let's come back to the two options you are meant to consider. A, there was a ghastly accident. B, there was a fatal accident. Now, do you know why there is an accident? Look at the question. Who were trapped in the damaged vehicle? So because of that particular choice of words, which is the diction of the examiner, damaged vehicle, trust me, there is an accident. But you now ask yourself a question, what kind of accident? Because in this example now, we have been given two types of accident. What are they? A ghastly accident, B, a fatal accident. Ask yourself, what is the difference between a ghastly accident and a fatal accident? Number one, a fatal accident is that accident that involves death. Number two, a ghastly accident is that accident that do not involve death. So wherever you hear the word fatal, it means death is involved. Wherever you hear the word ghastly, it means death was not involved. You could have a ghastly accident at home, no death. But once you say fatal accident, trust me, death is involved. And from the passage, what are the pointers that naturally denote that death was involved? Look at the first one, ocean of blood. Trust me, ocean of blood is not a pointer that actually suggests that death was involved. Because there could be an accident and there will be an ocean of blood and nobody dies. Yes, it's possible. But look at the pointers that shows that death was involved. We prayed endlessly for the souls of the departed. Souls of the departed, which means some people have died. We now said, rescuers were battling to remove the remains. Remains means what? Dead bodies, or those who have recently died. Now, these two pointers are the pointers that has brought us to that logical conclusion that what we had in that particular passage is a fatal accident. So the answer is option B, a fatal accident. Now, if you look at this particular passage, what have we discovered? Two things we have discovered. Number one, the examiner did not expressly tell us there was an accident in the passage. But we could deduce from what the writer has stated that there is or there was an accident. And the accident that actually happened in this passage is a fatal accident. So let's go at number 3. Statement of probability. Statement of probability. Now, naturally, before I even explain what statement of probability is, let me quickly give you an insight. Now, do you know that sometimes a writer might not be sure of a fact in a particular scenario, and the writer will merely guess at the fact. Now, once the writer is not sure of the fact in a passage, you are not meant to be sure in the passage. Why? Because the writer will give you pointers to letting you know he's not sure of the fact in the passage. Now, what is the danger of students? What is the porthole in this regard? The porthole is that students will naturally think that because the subject matter being raised by the examiner is well known to them, they will assume the position of the examiner and be sure of a fact. So under the statement of probability, the writer is not sure. So when the writer is not sure of a fact, but merely guesses at the fact, at the fact, he uses the statement of probability. Now, there are some pointers, the pointers that suggest the writer is not sure of the facts. These are maybe, probably, most likely. Etc. Now, these are pointers that shows that the writer is not sure of a fact. So once the writer is not sure, you are not meant to be sure. Now, let me give you another example before we go to the example from our past questions. Now, the first point we should note is that, number one, once the writer says a thing and the writer takes a position of not being sure of the fact, you must identify the pointer the writer has used in taking that position. What is the essence of the writer taking a position? The essence why the writer has taken a position is because the writer himself is not sure. And once he's not sure, he will guess. And for you to know he's guessing, he's not using pointers of certainty. He's using pointers of probability. Do you understand it now? He's using pointers of what? Probability. So once the writer uses pointers of probability, take note that the writer is not sure of the fact. And because of that, you yourself, you are not meant to be sure because you're not the one writing the passage. Now, what is the pothole the examiner uses in this regard? The examiner will bring a subject matter that is well known to the student. Now, because that subject matter is well known to the student, the examiner will silently hide in a thin line passage that he is not sure of the fact. Now, once the writer has taken a position that he is not sure of the fact, you are also not meant to be sure of the fact. How do you know that the writer is not sure? The writer will definitely give you pointers that he is not sure. And once you see the pointers, what do? You are not also meant to be what? To be sure. Let's take an example. We have this example now. AIDS is undoubtedly the most dreaded disease the world has known. Speculations have it that the first victims contracted the disease. Look at the word contracted. You don't contract disease, you contract disease. Now, that speculations have it that the first victims contracted the disease after having sexual intercourse with animals. If this speculation is anything to go by, it may have come from the white. Look at the pointer here. It may have come from the white. May. Now, why did the writer use the word may? Why did the writer use a certainty word like must? The writer used what? May. The reason the writer has used may is because he is not sure of the fact. So may is a pointer used to express probability, while must is a pointer used to express certainty. So in this regard, the writer is not certain. And because he's not certain, he merely guesses at the fact. So look at the options now. According to the passage, option A says, it came from the white. This option A is wrong. Do you know why it is wrong? Because it is certainty. Is the writer certain? No, the writer is not certain. The writer used the word what? May. So why would you say it came from the white? So option A is wrong. B says it did not come from the white, which is also not in the passage. Option C says it came from the white and animals. This one is also certainty, which is wrong. Option D says it probably came from the white. Look at the word again. Probably. Probably. So, which means that in this regard, the writer is not sure of the fact. And that is why the writer has merely guessed at the word, at the fact. So, the direct factual statement. What exactly do we refer to as the direct factual statement? This is when a fact is expressly stated in the passage. This is when a fact is expressly stated in the passage. Now, once the writer says a thing, or once the writer expresses a fact, irrespective of your own opine, it's not needed. The fact the examiner or the writer has stated is a fact, whether it's good to you or it's not good to you. So whatever the writer states in the passage, so I said, whatever a writer states in the passage is a fact to him, irrespective of your own opine. Opine here means opinion. Irrespective of your own opinion. Whatever the writer states is a fact to him. It's a fact to him. Now look at an example now. There are many lucrative courses in Nigerian universities. There is, however, one of the courses that is distinct and most lucrative, and that is none other than history. Do you see it here now? The writer says, there are many lucrative courses in Nigerian universities. There is, however, one of the courses that is distinct and most lucrative, and that is none other than history. The knowledge of the course makes us to marry our past with our present so that we can have a bright future as an offspring. most Nigerians think that professional courses like law, medicine, engineering, and accounting are most lucrative, but events have shown that these do not put meals on our table anymore. Now look at this now. Then I said, according to the passage, the most lucrative course is, look at it now, the examiner expressly stated that the most lucrative course is what? History. So irrespective of your opinion, whether you want to go and study law, whether you can study medicine, whether you can study accounting, whether you can study economics, whatever the writer has stated as the most lucrative course remains the most lucrative course, irrespective of your opinion. So here, according to the passage, the most lucrative course is what? History. Does that mean that law is not lucrative? Does that mean that medicine is not lucrative? No, does that mean that accounting is not lucrative? But the examiner expressly stated that the most lucrative course is what? History. So irrespective of your opinion, number one, irrespective of the course you want to go and study, the most lucrative course is what? History. So whatever the writer has stated as a fact remains a fact irrespective of your opinion. So in this regard, you must draw up your attention. You must draw up your mind that even if you have a divergent opinion to what the writer is saying, it is not necessary. So do not import your own personal idea into whatever the writer is saying. The writer has maintained that the most lucrative course is history, and that is the final. According to the passage, the most lucrative course is what? History. Now, this brings us to the end of this lesson. See you in our next lesson.